Broadcasting from our studio in Boston, Solutions Review is proud to showcase Cloudflare in the Solution Spotlight, an inside look at enterprise technologies.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to the Solution Spotlight featuring Cloudflare and focused on aligning to NIS2 cybersecurity risk management obligations in the EU. As of October 2024, the EU's mandatory cybersecurity directive, NIS2, has been implemented. As a result, organizations operating in the European Union across various sectors must enhance their cybersecurity measures to comply with the new regulations. So today, we're sharing a presentation by Cloudflare's David Tofan, Cybersecurity Solutions Engineer, and Sebastian Hufnagel, Senior Public Policy Manager, as they explain the most important changes under NIS2, what required risk management measures should be performed by organizations to help meet NIS2 requirements, and what cloud-based capabilities can help. Cloudflare has organized a deep presentation today on just that topic, so I'll hand this event to them and be back at the end to wrap things up.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We're really excited to have you here to talk through how to align to NIS2 obligations in the EU. My name is Justina Kuharchuk, and I'm the Solutions Product Marketing Lead on Data here at Cloudflare, and I'm joined by my colleagues, who I'll let introduce themselves: Sebastian Hufnagel, our Public Policy Manager, and David Tofan, our Solutions Engineer in DACH. Sebastian and David?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Sebastian. I'm based in Berlin, and I'm part of our global public policy team, which focuses on new regulations and policies that impact our business, our sector, and also our customers. So NIS2 is one of the important topics that we are looking at right now, as we are ourselves a regulated entity as an infrastructure provider, digital infrastructure provider. And at the same time, we see that this is an important topic for our customers. So we thought it would be a great moment to do this webinar.
Exactly. Good morning, everyone. David, my name. I'm a pre-sales solutions engineer here in Munich-based Germany. And I interact with a lot of different customers from different sectors here in the DACH region. So obviously, I've heard a lot about also these requirements. I've noticed that there are a lot of questions around how to implement NIS2 and what to do for NIS2, how to be compliant. And today, my job and my interest, obviously, as a technical person, will be for the technical people here in the audience. How do we make sure that we implement the capabilities to adhere to NIS2 compliance?
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. So excited to be here together with you to talk about these new obligations and see how different member states are imposing them and adopting them. Just to go through some housekeeping items and the agenda. First, we'll have a Q&A at the end of this session, so please feel free to submit questions in the Q&A window. We'll try to get through as many questions as possible at the end of today's webinar. And then if we don't get to your questions, we'll be able to follow up offline. So do definitely take advantage of that. Today's agenda will cover, an overview of the new NIS2 directive, specifically focusing on the scope and the obligations. We'll also cover the implementation status across EU member states. And finally, we'll complete our session today with how we at Cloudflare are looking at NIS2 and how we're preparing to help our customers meet some of these obligations. So one quick disclaimer. The presentation is for informational purposes only. This isn't legal advice, but we're really excited to, have an interesting dialogue today and hopefully answer all of your questions and get some feedback from you. So without further ado, before we go into the first portion of our presentation, we wanted to get just kind of a reading on the room, specifically, whether you are impacted by NIS2. So there's a quick poll, which I'll give everyone a few minutes to answer. And let us know if you're having any trouble answering that. We'll give everyone another 20 or so seconds.
We see some answers coming in, which is great. Personally, I feel very interested as well to know how prepared many companies are out there. I mean, we all have heard of NIS2. We've seen it in the news. It's coming at the end of this year. And I'm also wondering what kind of audience we have, of course, here today as well. Like, are there CISOs, IT people, compliance officers, and what are the main interests? And we hope to cover most of the topics today as well.
All right. I know some of you guys are still submitting, but I'm going to go ahead, and we have a ton of things to cover, so I'm going to move on to the poll results just to give us a sense here. So I think, okay, so I feel like there's a mix here, an even split a little bit. The majority of you aren't sure if you're impacted, so I'm glad you found us, and hopefully we'll answer partially that question for you today. And then some of you are impacted but don't know exactly how. So hopefully we'll cover all of your specific questions and needs as you're starting out on this NIS2 journey. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and now hand it off to Sebastian, who will take us through an overview and start off covering some of the scope of the obligations and the scope of who's impacted. So, Sebastian.
Thank you, Justina. Interesting to see these results compared to the survey we ran last week, where we did a similar webinar for a German-speaking audience. The number of people who didn't know if they were impacted was much lower, actually. So I think it also depends a bit on like how advanced the discussions are in your respective countries. And in some countries, clearly, some countries are less advanced than others in their transposition. So this could explain why there's even more uncertainty within the group we have here today. So let's dive in to the topic right away. I'm going to give you an overview more broadly about the NIS2 requirements and what's the current status of implementation in the EU. As most of you will know, the NIS2 Directive is the most preeminent piece of cybersecurity regulation that applies across the 27 EU member states. It revises the directive, the first directive, the NIS directive, which was adopted in 2016. And after the digitization continued significantly after the first directive, with the COVID pandemic, more and more services moved into digital, but also geopolitical developments that increased the threat landscape enormously. The EU felt that they needed to update the framework, to modernize it, make it fit for our new times today. And so the new directive was adopted 2 years ago. And this year in October, we are facing the deadline for member states to transpose the minimum requirements that are set by the directive into their national laws. And when doing so, the member states can go beyond those obligations. This is important to note. So what we talk about today, mostly it's the minimum requirements there may be more that companies need to do based on their respective national laws. I'll mention some of these, but we can only do this by means of example, as this is a lot, of course. What are the main changes that we've seen with this new directive? First, we have a much bigger scope. So more companies and more entities will need to comply. Second, we have more requirements, new requirements, but also stricter requirements for those who are in scope. And we have increased enforcement powers for the national competent authorities to make sure these rules are actually implemented. I will go into each of these a little bit more on the next few slides. So in this chart, you can see all the services, all the sectors that are now in scope of NIS2. The ones that are surrounded in blue are actually the new ones that have been added compared to NIS1. And you can see that a significant amount of new sectors is in there, ranging from waste treatment, wastewater treatment, but also public administration, to manufacturing in different sectors like chemicals, electronics, automotive, machinery, also food production. So big sectors of industry that are, including many companies in the EU. By thinking about which sectors to include, the EU took this approach to think what needs to be protected in terms of impact on the economy and the society. And this explains why you have this wide range of sectors. However, it's important to be proportionate, and not every entity within the sectors can be expected to comply. EU policymakers introduced a size cap rule, which means that entities that are within these sectors and that have more than 50 employees and more than 10 million euros of annual turnover are in scope. So small and micro entities are not considered to be in scope. However, there are some exceptions from this rule. This is just a simplification here. For example, so the size cap rule doesn't apply to public administration. It also doesn't apply to certain small companies that have a very high risk profile. So in those special cases, member states can still determine that certain entities fall into scope. What's also important to note here is that we distinguish between essential entities and important entities. The only difference being that essential entities, those on the left side, they have to proactively provide evidence for their compliance with NIS2. For example, every 3 years they have to provide an audit report to the competent authorities, while the important entities, so slightly less critical entities, only have to do so if requested by the competent authority. And for instance, if the authority has reason to suspect that they are not doing enough, they can be asked to produce an audit or to become inspected. The substantive requirements are actually the same for both. It's really just about this element of when to produce the evidence. Moving to the obligations of NIS2 that these companies that are in scope need to fulfill. As I mentioned, these are more granular now. They are more harmonized as well, which is positive for companies, as hopefully the requirements in the different member states will be more similar than they used to be under NIS1. I should add that every company that is in scope needs to register within the member state where it has an establishment or where it has operations that are in scope of the directive, with the exception of digital infrastructure or digital service providers who provide services across borders. there we only have the requirement to register in one member state, and that competent authority in that member state will be responsible for supervision of that entity. So Cloudflare, for example, we provide digital services and we will be regulated in Portugal only. One of the big changes in NIS2 is that companies will have to report incidents much more quickly and following a 3-stage approach, with the first early warning to be given within 24 hours at the latest and without undue delay, so possible even before that. Then after, to be followed by another report after 72 hours, more detailed, and then a kind of final report after 1 month. This is really new in this, in this detail, this definition. When we look at the management measures, risk management measures, we also see new elements such as supply chain security, requirements for encryption, multi-factor authentication, and employee training. Again, these details were not included in NIS1. And finally, NIS2 requires mandatory training for management. On the enforcement side, we see that competent authorities can ask for on-site inspections, they can ask for targeted security audits, or they can carry out security scans. They can also apply higher administrative fines in the order of up to 10 million euros or 2% of annual turnover, which is kind of similar to GDPR, what we know there, and just will greatly enhance the perceived risk of non-compliance and increase awareness of this, even in the kind of top leadership of these entities. Also, the third point here, which creates the possibility to competent authorities to order the suspension of the services in question if there are continued issues, really in severe cases of non-compliance, and they could also order the responsible manager to be suspended temporarily. So pretty harsh measures that can be imposed here.
And just before we kind of move forward or into the next section, I'm curious, you talked a bit about how member states, there is more harmonization, but there's still some way that member states can interpret these obligations in their own right. Can you give some examples where member states have gone beyond this directive?
Yes, for sure. So I can maybe give some examples of Germany, which I know best, where Germany maintains a third category of critical entities. So within the group of essential entities, they have a separate group called critical infrastructure providers, and they apply even stricter requirements to that subgroup if you want. Like they have to use threat detection measures, unlike the other entities. Also, they require a broader scope as they apply this, 10 million and at least 50 employee criteria as an alternative criterion. So it's enough to fulfill one of these, either of these two, in order to be considered in scope. You don't need to fulfill both of them. So this increases the number of entities in scope to, we think, around 30,000, up from 1,800 under NIS1. It's a big increase. And also Germany has stricter requirements on the liability of management if something happens. So the management has to approve all the measures and the security strategy. And if they are, guilty, to be found guilty of a damage that is caused because the measures were not implemented properly, they could be liable towards the entity.
Thanks for showing. Yeah, thanks for sharing some of those specific examples. And I think it's highlights that there's harmonization, but some variation, right? Depending on specific regional needs. Great. Yeah, I know you still have to
move.
finish your section before we
Yes.
move on to the
Let-
event. So
to the
I'll let
next
you.
one. Maybe just to give you like a short overview of where we stand in terms of transposition in the EU. So we can see a very mixed picture here. If you look at the map, we can see that around out of the 27 member states, 7 don't seem to have done anything so far. So at least we don't know of any particular developments. 8 are currently in the consultation phase, including Germany and France. That means that there is some kind of draft or stakeholder consultation going on, but no kind of final proposal. In 9 countries, including Italy, Poland, Netherlands, and Austria, we have already a proposal adopted, but it's still like in the parliamentary process, still being discussed. And in only 3 countries, we have already national legislation adopted. These are Belgium, Croatia, and Hungary, really the front runners here. So considering this delay in many of the countries, which it's caused by different factors like national elections or complex federalist negotiations, like in Germany, we don't think the deadline can be kept in many countries. The October 17 deadline. Some countries might go into the next spring until we have the national law. However, that doesn't mean that we should relax now and lean back. I think it's important to get prepared and to get compliant as soon as possible, as much as we can. It never does any harm, and if something happens, it's always good to demonstrate that one is proactive in the implementation or application of these measures. With that, I conclude my section of the presentation, and I hand over to David to dive in more into the cybersecurity risk management measures and the capabilities needed to comply with those. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Yes, so for the CISOs, the IT people here in the audience, this will be a bit more about the technical side of things, about the capabilities side of things, especially here, of course, at Cloudflare. Which capabilities do we have to potentially help comply with these NIS cybersecurity risk management measures? And it's also important for us at Cloudflare, of course, because as Sebastian mentioned at the very beginning, we here at Cloudflare ourselves are a digital infrastructure sector, like NIS2 will apply to us as well. So it's as important for us internally as it is for our customers to see how can we help be compliant. Yeah. So just wanting to go back to those times, essentially those like simpler times, let's say like many years ago, when we were still thinking of like just everything having centralized, everything having inside an office, everything having inside one data center, one place only. These used to be, let's say, simpler times, more or less. However, as we all know, like through the digitalization efforts, digital transformation efforts out there, through globalization, through the pandemic as well that we have suffered as well a few years ago, everything has become, and we've realized that it has become much more distributed. So everything has become more complicated, right? But more powerful as well. So we have a lot more solutions out there, not only on-premise, but we're moving to hybrid cloud models, SaaS model. Everything is just distributed everywhere. Our applications are distributed, our employees are distributed. And obviously that also increases the attack vector. So here it's important to note that these kind of policies like NIS2 help many companies out there to basically recognize this fact and do something about it, right? Like what we want to see here is the motivation and the support to those relevant companies, to those critical, essential infrastructure companies to increase their security and basically take it serious. And here we at Cloudflare, we see this distributed behavior out there, and we have a very unique insight into what's going on out there. And we just see everything increasing as well. Not only the complexity, but also the attacks. Cyber attacks know no borders, right? So it doesn't matter where your services are, where your employees are, where you're based. Cyber threats are out there, a lot of bot traffic, a lot of automated traffic, a lot of targeted traffic. And this is something that we have seen a sharp increase in the last year or so, where there has been a very coincidental link between attacks, very targeted attacks, to geopolitical events as well. So attackers basically choose more prominent targets to also attract, of course, maximum attention. Some of those targets can be from governments to critical infrastructure, which NIS is very peculiar about, of course, to law enforcement, news and media, and of course the tech industry. A very much critical infrastructure is obviously out there on the rise in terms of like suffering from attacks. A quick Google search will show you some interesting news headlines, of course. And we here at Cloudflare, we've noticed that. Not only from customers reaching out to us, but as well, of course, from our threat intelligence. Just simply taking the numbers of DDoS attacks we have already mitigated in this first half of 2024. We mitigated approximately 8.5 million DDoS attacks just in the last 6 months. For comparison, back in 2023, last year, we fended off 14 million DDoS attacks in the whole year, which means just this year, in the first 6 months, we've already reached approximately 60% of the previous year figure. And that shows a lot already, without going too much into detail. But I do recommend you all, of course, to check out our blogs, check out our radar.cloudflare.com website, where we also publish part of these like internet trends and attack trends, which are very peculiar to see as well what's going on out there. And of course, this wouldn't be a Cloudflare presentation, a Cloudflare webinar, without showing our network map. This is one of my favorite slides because this not only showcases our exposure, our infrastructure, our global network infrastructure, but it also showcases the insights that we have essentially from where our attacks originating from, where we are stopping them. And this allows us to also call us the connectivity cloud out there, because not only are customers trusting us to protect them from cyber threats out there, but we're also making sure to provide connectivity between whatever you may have, on a web application, self-hosted, a SaaS application, an employee traveling around the world. We want to make sure that all these things are interconnected, that they're connected with each other, and we want to make sure that they're safe. And because requirements in IT security have become very much more complex, and NIS2 only intensifies this, we want to provide this like unique interface, this one single interface of management and monitoring, where you have everything from security, performance, to reliability, so you can make sure that everything is safe and you have an overview over everything. This is obviously also possible through our partners. So we work together with, for example, Microsoft Intelligence Security Association, MISA, the Alliance for Cybersecurity in Germany, and so on, where we not only share part of our threat intelligence, but we also obviously make sure to share best practices, to make sure that we can improve our solutions and protect our customers better as well. So coming to the next slide, we will be seeing the 10 NIS2 risk management measures at a glance. So these, I imagine most of you have already read mostly about them, the 10 measures that are important for the companies out there that will be affected. And basically, it reaches from everything that is policy related, right? Like risk analysis, information system security, processes related, to incident handling, business continuity, which a lot of here also define as uptime, right? And of course, anything related to network and information system security, basic hygiene, cyber hygiene of employees as well, training, very important. Cryptography, which in my opinion is also a very, very interesting point, which many, unfortunately, people forget about because we take it for granted that TLS is just secure. But I will get to that in a minute. And of course, anything related to access control, asset management. And measure 10 is something that I find very interesting as well, because MFA, multi-factor authentication, for me is an obvious choice. Like in the last 10 years, I am surprised to see that this is still a topic, to be honest, but I guess it is. I mean, we have to make sure that this is something that we want, but that we need to implement, that our employees not only have a username, a password, maybe even something passwordless implemented, but that we have this multi-factor authentication in place to secure communications and secure authorization access. So yeah, I think here at this next point, we have a little poll. Justina, do you want to?
Sure, yeah. So this is our second poll. We have 3. So real quick, if you guys can read through this question and start answering, but this is all about zero trust architecture and your approach to your architecture. If you are familiar with zero trust, if you aren't, if you've started implementing or have already begun your journey, we'd love to know more, because this is a great lead into our next section, which covers how zero trust plays a key role in NIS2.
Exactly. Thank you, Justina. So very important here. Zero trust is explicitly even promoted here in the NIS2 risk management measures. So I believe it was measure 7 that talks about it mostly, but we will see in a minute that zero trust is an approach, zero trust architecture, zero trust strategy is an approach that covers several points. And of course, here at Cloudflare, we as customer 0 of our own zero trust solution, we are very proud of being able to improve our own product, to use our own product, and to see that already, part of this product essentially helps us already to be compliant with certain NIS2 risk management measures. So very curious to see where people are out there standing right now with their companies. Here we have already the results coming in. Thank you, Justina. I see some interesting division.
It looks like it's about a quarter of you are somewhere along the journey or haven't started. So really big difference between some of you there. But on the zero trust side, which is not too surprising, I think, David, right? I think there's definitely, we have customers and prospects out there talking to us who haven't started and are looking to start, and some that have already begun, and we're trying to help them along their a portion of their journey. Love to hear more.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm actually interested also in the people in the 25% here that said they already implemented zero trust architecture approach. So this is something that I find always very curious, because it's hard to implement zero trust. It's a journey. It's something that takes, for some companies, weeks, months. For others, it takes years. So if you already implement the zero trust architecture, I would love to hear how you did that, with which provider you did that, and how you're managing all these things, because it's always an interesting insight and an interesting learning, which is exciting to hear, of course. And if you've done it with us, perfect. Then we're happy to talk about feature requests and about potential improvements, of course, as well. So yeah, NIS2 is a concept. So a key concept that is for compliance with NIS2 regulations is zero trust. It's explicitly promoted within the directive, and it plays a very, very critical and central role, especially in these 5 measures. So we're reaching here from supply chain security to identify vulnerabilities in third-party applications, where we want to help, of course, identify potential vulnerabilities in third-party applications, in protecting websites from third-party content threats, in controlling resource access and data availability. Think about secure web gateway also, and these kind of solutions. If you want to drill down deeper, happy to talk about it as well. But of course, today we want to talk and focus on the capability side of things that Cloudflare can offer with their Zero Trust offering. Measure 5 focuses on the security in network information systems. These are already concepts that remind us of Zero Trust, right? Like we want to inspect internet traffic to prevent phishing, ransomware, other internet risks. We want to basically implement Zero Trust policies to tightly control access to enterprise networks, to information systems, who can access what and under which context or identity-based policies. And we want to secure connectivity and routing while enforcing network firewall policies. So measure 7 focuses on training and cyber hygiene. Protecting against phishing, again, is a very big topic here to support good employee cyber hygiene, that they know what to do, how to recognize phishing, spam, and these kind of things, protect them proactively against threats. Because in the end, we're all human, we all make mistakes. So that's why solutions like our Cloud Email Security solution, for example, where we want to preemptively detect and stop phishing attacks without the employee having to do anything, or even isolate websites or malware by running like an Chromium browser, an isolated browser on Cloudflare's global network, so that anything that is malware related stays away also from your user devices without the employee having to do anything as well. But of course, training is a big part still. Measure 9 focuses on personnel security, tracking endpoints, tracking assets that you have out there. Think anything role-based access, control capabilities to establish, again, who has access to what, which kind of assets do you have. Think also shadow IT, right? Like we want to know what kind of assets are being used. We also want to control that usage through data loss prevention services, for example, scan sensitive data that goes out from SaaS applications, web traffic, and so on. And we want to help address anything that is like these asset management requirements, and also track access control for who has access to what. And then again, my favorite point, right? MFA, that should be obvious. Who still here hasn't implemented MFA today? Please do that today or tomorrow the latest, because this is part of our Zero Trust Network Access solution as well, Access, where organizations need to enforce MFA and session management to basically allow allow different behaviors depending on users' identity, device location, and other criteria, and so on, of course. If you're starting your journey or you still don't know when to start your journey, this is the one that this is the Zero Trust architecture roadmap that we want to share with you. I recommend anyone wanting to start Zero Trust, please reach out to us. Go on our website, Google Cloudflare Zero Trust roadmap. You will find a bunch of different resources, a bunch of different examples, different phases that you can adopt. And here on the right, we see a brief example of this, reaching from starting basically with phase 1 from anything that's like phishing protection by just changing your MX records to our cloud email security solution, or even starting with DNS filtering by just changing the DNS servers on in your office, for example. So simple things that we can start with, but obviously reaching to much more complex things. But we don't have to do it all at once. We want to make it in phases. We want to take different steps depending on your architecture, depending on where you're standing, which kind of solutions you're already using today. But we want to help you not only consolidate those solutions into our platform, but we want to help you, of course, reach this Zero Trust mentality through a journey that we would love to start with you. And here we have another poll.
Yeah, we have one more poll. So we'll go through this quickly as we're running out of time. We want to make sure we give you time for Q&A. But this last poll, if you can take 2 seconds and answer it. If you've had any experiences with DDoS attacks recently, we want to know, because that's also pertinent to NIS2 and what we'll be talking about next, which is application security, which plays a huge role in the NIS2 directive, just like Zero Trust. So I'll give everyone another few seconds to answer this. We'll go through and move through this quickly to make sure that we get some time for your questions at the end.
Yes, another important aspect of NIS2 and of course of security is application security. And this is why I believe it was measure 2 for business continuity. We want to make sure that we know, measure 3 it was, business continuity, where we want to know, okay, uptime 100%, we want to offer that here at Cloudflare. And this is something where DDoS protection, of course, comes as well into place. Just a brief look on the poll survey. Interesting to see also a big division between the 3 answers. Yes, we were able to fend off everything. Great to hear that. I hope you're using Cloudflare. If not, good for you. Of course, our main goal is that you stay safe and that you are here to learn a little bit more about NIS2 and of course what Cloudflare can help you to potentially comply with NIS2 risk management measures. And there are a lot of attacks out there, as we said, and we want to help with not only the zero trust part of things, but also with application security part of things. And here we have the 3 measures that are mostly focused on application security as well, where Cloudflare has solutions in place to help from, as I mentioned before, DDoS protection for business continuity, regarding supply chain security, what I mentioned before as well, partially, which is like monitor and control which kind of cookies or third-party scripts are running also on your web applications. And we want to obviously monitor those, keep in check what is happening there and protect against like attacks like mage card attacks. And one of my favorite points, actually, measure 8, cryptography and encryption. I believe we often forget that encryption and certificate management can be pretty difficult to implement sometimes. But here at Cloudflare, we want to make it easy for you. We are building state-of-the-art encryption into all our products, of course, and we want to assist with anything that is management related and automate as much as possible for you and allow you to use different methods to use your own keys, to host your own keys, even like storing your own keys and manage them yourself, or even capitalize with geo key management for granular control on where those private keys are stored and used. So different things we want to do here, but application security is a very, very big topic here at Cloudflare, of course, because this is also something we started with many, many years ago. And with that, for those familiar with Cloudflare, I hope you recognize that we want to provide you with a unified security platform, which is enabled, of course, by our global network, by our threat intelligence and all these different points of presence we have worldwide to stop attacks in their track from wherever they're originating. And we want to simplify things for you. And security is not easy. It's unfortunately not, there's no silver bullet out there, but we want to become at least an umbrella for your security and ensure better protection, visibility, and of course, help you adhere with those 10 NIS measures that I've mentioned before. And with that, I invite you, of course, to download as well our NIS2 white paper, which is coming up soon. We will have some more details about Cloudflare capabilities and some other detailed information about how Cloudflare can help you and what NIS2 is again, as well as the scope and so on. And we're excited to see what's in the Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you, David. And you should be able to download this paper, which has a detailed mapping of the capabilities as part of your webinar. You should see that in your downloadable files. You'll also get it by email. So quickly for Q&A, I know we don't have a bunch of time. We will stay over a couple of minutes to answer some of these questions. One question that came in was, what if we have subsidiaries in different European countries which local requirements are relevant? And I think, Sebastian, I think you answered this.
So not according to NIS2, it's not an obligation, but member states are free to include, of course, additional sectors. And as one of our participants just highlighted, apparently in one country, I'm not sure which country that is, but universities are included under derived public person category. So it does happen in some countries. We don't have a complete overview, of course, and the laws are still being debated in many countries, so it's still not finalized. But yeah, in theory, it could be possible.
Awesome. And a few more questions here. How does the NIS2 interact with other EU policies?
So we have a number of regulations that were adopted also in parallel with NIS2 that have some potential overlaps with it. So we have, for example, the critical entities regulation, CER, which is about physical security, and physical and cybersecurity. They can overlap. So there will be a challenge for member states to make sure that there's no duplication of reporting structures, for example. And there's also the DORA regulation for the financial sector, which has specific requirements for entities active there. And again, so these specific requirements would supersede requirements in the NIS2 directive. That's important to consider.
That's good to know. And then finally, one more question. Are the detailed measures only going to be determined at the member state level? And I think you touched upon this with some of your earlier commentary and answering, some of the questions around the universities impacted in specific member states and not others. But
so actually, there will be also like common, more technical requirements defined at EU level. So right now we have an implementing regulation for digital service providers, which has been published for comments with more detailed requirements where the risk management measures are defined in a more concrete way. So this is interesting also for other sectors to look at, because many of these requirements could be translated to other sectors. Plus, there's European certification schemes like the cloud security scheme that is currently in the final negotiations. So these schemes could be made mandatory for certain sectors, either EU-wide or by member states. So there's an increasing level of harmonization at EU level as well, also with the NIS2 cooperation group, where national authorities come together to define common standards on how to implement NIS2 in more concrete terms.
Awesome. We have one last question that came in, and I think we have some time to answer it, but I know we covered this already to an extent, but if you are looking to implement, the NIS2 or directive, and should you stick to zero trust if you're implementing Cloudflare? Are you basically sticking to the zero trust architecture approach, or is there anything else to consider? So I think, we talked a little bit about zero trust, but are there any other kind of specific approaches or things to consider and best practices around security beyond zero trust?
Definitely. So zero trust is a very, very big part that covers a lot of different measures, different solutions. However, as I mentioned before as well, application security is still a big topic, right? We have anything that is internal facing employees using applications and employees going out to the internet. So this is a very big part. But then we, of course, have also external facing applications, which might be public websites and so on, where we want to have business continuity. We want to protect the supply chain as well, regarding third-party scripts and so on that we're using. So we're really going through these two big brackets of categories that Cloudflare also provides as a solution, which is zero trust. And yes, definitely focus on zero trust. It's a very, very big, important topic. If you're pursuing a zero trust architecture, you're on a good way to already adhere to most of those risk management measures. And then the second part is, of course, application security, which includes also a lot of different variables. But happy to talk in more detail if you want to talk more, contact us, and we'll see where the journey goes.
And maybe to add to this quickly, besides these technical measures, there's also a lot of governance-related measures where companies need to make sure they have the structures in place to, track and fulfill all the requirements. So it's also on the organizational side. So of course, we are just showing a part of the picture today where we can help, but there's much more. And I would advise everybody, to seek for external support if you are in doubt what to do.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I know that we're about 5 minutes over. I thank you for those of you who have stayed on. And I really thank you, David and Sebastian. I know I've learned a lot today. I hope all of you that attended did as well. If you have more questions, you know where to go. We have some contact information on how to get in touch with us if you have more questions about NIS2 or how our solutions might map to NIS2. Again, you have that downloadable white paper if you want to learn more. And if we haven't answered your question, we'll happy to hear from you in the future. So please reach out.
So there you have it, another solution in our spotlight. We want to thank David and Sebastian and Cloudflare for that presentation, and we appreciate your attention as well. Until next time, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review. Thanks for watching.
If your business would like to be featured in a future event, contact us today.